Tonight, the major market meltdown, even worse than yesterday's, as the president's tariffs send investors panicking. A brutal day on Wall Street. Markets plunging nearly 10% in just 2 days. The Dow's biggest two-day drop ever, as China hits back with its own tariffs and consumers feel more impacts. This video game console now delayed. And the criticism as President Trump golfed today while the markets tumbled. Widespread destruction. The tornado outbreak leveling entire neighborhoods in Tennessee. Home after home pounded into rubble. And now the flooding. This main street in Kentucky underwater, where the storms head next. Set him free. A judge weighs in on the Maryland man who the government admits they mistakenly deported to El Salvador to a prison there, ordering him returned to the U.S. But will the government bring him back? His wife speaks out. Comedian charged. International star Russell Brand accused of sexual assault and rape. He is firing back tonight. Finally freed. The American couple held in a Mexican prison over a timeshare dispute, now out. What they're revealing about their time behind bars. Baseball star break-in. The Dodger, whose house was ransacked near this break-in of an NFL Hall of Famer. And TikTok lives to scroll another day. Tomorrow's deadline postponed. How China is holding up the deal. Top story starts right now. Good evening. I'm Ellison Barber in for Tom Llamas. Tonight, escalating fears of a recession. Stocks taking a nosedive for a second straight day as President Trump's trade war sparks a mass sell-off. Here's a look at the markets at close. The Dow Jones down 5.5%. The S&P 500 plummeting nearly 6%. The Nasdaq also tumbling nearly 6%. Trillions of dollars completely wiped out. Over the past 2 days alone, the Dow dropping more than 3,900 points. That is just over 9%. China striking back with reciprocal tariffs, slapping 34% on all U.S. goods. Right now, the European Union is considering measures on U.S. tech, and Canada's prime minister announcing his country would match a 25% U.S. auto or 25% in U.S. auto tariffs. All of this just adding to the chaos on Wall Street. And now major companies are reacting. Klarna and StubHub are delaying plans to go public, and Nintendo is halting pre-orders on its highly anticipated Switch 2 console. A big question tonight, how long until consumers see prices jump? Our experts standing by, and we begin with NBC's senior business correspondent, Christine Romans.
On Wall Street today, a second day of dramatic losses and high anxiety over Donald Trump's global trade war. The president today golfing at his club in Florida, and his only public comments on the economy via social media, posting, "My policies will never change," that he had a very productive call with Vietnam about a possible deal, and pressuring Fed Chair Jerome Powell saying, "Cut interest rates, Jerome, and stop playing politics." Powell speaking with journalists at a conference in Virginia.
We've taken a step back, and we're watching to see what the policies turn out to be and the ways in which they will affect the economy.
Recession forecasts growing. J.P. Morgan now expecting the economy to contract under the weight of the tariffs, and that a recession will drive unemployment up to 5.3%. David Kelly is the bank's chief global strategist.
Tariffs push up prices, they cut employment, they slow economic growth, they reduce productivity, they cut corporate profits.
Top Democrats today ripping into the president.
This week, Donald Trump made one of the dumbest decisions he's ever made as president, and that's saying a lot.
Today's Wall Street plunge triggered by China's tit for tat, announcing 34% tariffs on all American goods imported after President Trump imposed that same figure on China.
This retaliation from China, where does that leave the soybean farmer?
We're in that twilight zone right now. We don't know.
Last year, the U.S. exported $143.5 billion worth of goods to China. Topping the list, the kind of soybeans fifth-generation farmer Glenn Newcomer grows in Ohio.
My portfolio is the commodity or the grain that's sitting in the grain bins here. My commodity is going down in value, no different than what the stock market is doing. So when I look at my current assets, they're going down. and hopefully it will turn around.
Concerns about a growing risk of recession overshadowing today's report showing the U.S. economy added 228,000 jobs in March.
And Christine Romans joins us now alongside NBC News White House correspondent Llamas Alcindor. Christine, yesterday felt bad. Today feels even worse. Are we in the middle of a full-fledged panic for investors?
Look, it was the worst 2 days for the Dow ever in terms of points, 1,500 points back to back. That's bad. And you had some $5 trillion in market value just wiped away in a couple of days. So clearly the mood is very, very sour here. And I'll just say, ending the week, you didn't find it was still just heavy selling at the closing bell. So clearly the market's condemning the president's trade agenda.
Llamas, as Christine mentioned in her report that we showed there, the president spent today golfing and also posting messages online like this one saying that only the weak will fail. What is the White House's plan here? Is it just to power through the ups and downs right now, or all the downs rather, and hope the markets rebound?
That's right. That is the plan. A White House official just telling me they believe the economy will be, quote, fine, and that President Trump is not concerned. He's not at all worried that golfing and being in Florida is at all a bad split screen when you have the markets doing what they're doing and plummeting as the Dow was doing today. The president really believes what he's doing is right and that he's fulfilling a campaign promise, Ellison.
Christine, you outlined the fears growing of a recession. Is there anything that could turn things around?
Well, the president says the Fed should be cutting interest rates, and that's a real tough position for the Federal Reserve to be in. They need to wait to see just what these policies are going to do to the economy. The big worry from economists is that you could get into a situation with stagflation, an economy that is not growing and inflation that is. If the Fed cuts rates, that could fuel inflation. So they're in a really tough spot here.
Llamas, we have seen a few Republicans break with President Trump on this, not a lot. But is there a sense in Washington that more Republicans on Capitol Hill might start defecting, if you will, and speak out against these tariffs?
It's really going to depend on how bad things are. We have seen now a rare thing, which is some Republicans publicly pushing back and even introducing resolutions in Congress to try to wrestle back some of the power when it comes to tariffs. But really, President Trump remains popular among Republicans, and as a result, lawmakers don't want to cross him. But let's remember, these lawmakers are worried about the 2026 midterms, where President Trump, of course, as of now, isn't running for re-election, though, of course, he has talked about possibly running for a third term, which would violate the U.S. Constitution. But more on that later, Ellison.
Llamas Alcindor reporting at the White House. Christine Romans reporting here in New York. Thank you both. And the effects of these tariffs go far beyond the stock market. Small businesses and consumers in communities, big and small, are already feeling the impacts. Tonight, we teamed up with some of our local stations and affiliates across the country to show you that impact firsthand. Across America, Trump's tariffs touching almost everything.
I just worry, and I want it all to be over with.
From aisle 3 of a San Jose supermarket.
I have two boys, so they're constantly hungry. My wife already has actually started to sort of penny pinch, not overbuy.
To products used at River Market Restaurant in Kansas City.
Probably a tariff on this packaging right here. So now you've got almost like a double tariff, so to speak.
Outside of Birmingham, Alabama.
This particular gown would run around $3,500 to $3,800.
Our NBC affiliate there spent the day at a bridal boutique. Here's WVTM anchor Lisa Crane.
Now, some of the companies and designers who actually design these beautiful gowns actually have them manufactured or sewn together in Asian countries like China or Myanmar.
So far, we've only had one of our designers that has reached out to us and implemented an increase with the tariffs. According to them, it should have been at 20%, but they only went up 10%, which we're grateful for.
She says some designers already raised their prices on their latest collections, anticipating the tariffs.
If you have a gown that would normally retail for $4,000, that could increase anywhere from $500 to $700 or $800.
Also bracing for impact, Jungle Gym's international market in Cincinnati. Reporter Rachel Whelan from WLWT is there.
Few businesses will feel the effects of these tariffs like Jungle Gyms. However, employees here say they're still optimistic.
Our plan so far has been how do we squeeze our margins enough to make sure that all of the customers feel safe to come shop and eat here, right?
Now, Mark says customers might start to feel the effects more in about 1 to 2 years when they have to replace products like these canned chilies from India.
And tariffs could drive up prices across industries. Julia LeBlanc from our NBC station in Connecticut explains how you could soon see less of a deal at car dealerships.
While there are cars that are assembled here in the U.S., most of them are imported from foreign countries, or all of the parts are also foreign.
This is an engine in one of our vehicles, and that absolutely would be subject to tariff.
Jeff Ayosa says there are 260 new car dealerships here in our state, employing about 14,000 people. Ayosa says these tariffs will have an effect on inventory, and customers can expect to see the impact of that in about 60 to 90 days. And with prices going up, dealerships may have to downsize.
It's going to be shared pain, and what is the disbursement of that? We don't know.
And tariffs having an indirect impact as well.
It hurts my heart, honestly.
Like on tulip tourism in Washington State's Skagit Valley. Eric Wilkinson from King 5 News reports.
The month of April is like Christmas for the people of Skagit County. Typically, around 600,000 people from across the globe come to visit the tulip fields. But this year, it may be up to the locals to keep these fields full. The annual Tulip Festival brings about $83 million to the region. It's restaurants, hotels, and much more. But since talk of Trump's tariffs, there's been a border backlash against America. Crossings from British Columbia to the U.S. have dropped by 43%. And tulip farmers fear that will extend through the Spring Festival and perhaps beyond.
Part of being a Skagitonian is the ability to continue to survive and to continue to come back year after year.
A hope that locals will see the valley through this season until a better one arrives.
Remind Americans what Americans do best, and that is we show up in times that are good and in times that are more of a struggle.
And in addition to the stations and reporters you heard from there, we want to thank KNTV in the Bay Area and KSHB in Kansas City for their help with that story. Now to the rising death toll after a string of severe storms tore through the Midwest and South. At least 8 people are now dead, and many communities tonight dealing with dangerous flooding. Our Kathy Park is on the ground in Selmer, Tennessee, with the very latest.
The storm-weary South back in the bullseye again tonight. Relentless rain pushing rivers to the brink. Millions from Arkansas to Ohio on high alert for potentially record-breaking floods. Heavy downpours already flooding neighborhoods. Parts of Nashville underwater. In Hopkinsville, Kentucky, rising waters reaching dangerous new levels. Our Shaq Brewster is there.
Residents here tell me they've never seen anything like this before. The river overtaking what's normally a park, flooding some of those cars and rushing into businesses. The building manager telling me the water inside is still rising.
Oh, wow. And it'll be the same, like I said, all this at minimum is happening all down here right now.
And tragedy in the storm zone. A 9-year-old boy was swept away and killed by rushing waters on his way to the school bus. At least 8 deaths and 23 injuries being blamed on the violent weather that began Wednesday. Several rounds of violent storms, including tornadoes, large hail, and destructive winds pounding the same region day after day.
We are expecting this extreme weather event to continue.
Tennessee dealing with dual disasters, twisters, and floods. And here in Selmer, Tennessee, this community reduced to a tragic debris field.
That was scary.
Violet Peterson and her roommate were inside their home when the tornado touched down.
All I could think to do was cover her up and ask God to protect us, and wow.
They survived, but the trauma runs deep.
I can't go through that again.
A storm right out of a storybook without the happy ending.
And Kathy Park joins us now from Selmer, Tennessee. Kathy, a new wave of storms expected tonight. How are people there preparing? And just take us through some of the damage and destruction we're seeing behind you.
Yeah, Ellison, unfortunately, they're bracing for another blow. And as you can see, they're dealing with the existing disaster. And a likely EF3 tornado came through here Wednesday night into Thursday and left this massive debris field. Just take a look. The debris stretches for miles. Homes leveled, trees toppled, and you have just everything, belongings, cars just scattered
all around here. And I do want to point something out. I'm actually standing in what used to be a home. The family, they told me they actually survived by going right here into the basement. Incredibly, everyone got out alive. And Allison, officials tonight, they're saying stay on guard because these storms are on their way. Allison?
Kathy Park, thank you, and stay safe. For more on the severe weather, I want to turn to the forecast with NBC meteorologist Bill Cairns. Bill, talk to us about what you're seeing there.
Allison, we're in the beginnings of what appears to be another tornado outbreak. Probably won't be as bad as the one we had, 4 days ago when we have now 40-some tornadoes. But all it takes is one to hit a community, and then it's a horrific tragedy. So we have numerous tornado warnings. We got 1, 2 out there currently. Tornado watches go from Paducah to Nashville to Memphis to Little Rock, the same exact areas we've been talking about the last 3 days. So we've got storms tonight, we got storms tomorrow, and then finally by Sunday, the weather pattern changes and we can begin our recovery. But we have to get there first. And you notice this right here, this is our tornado warning. We've had a reported tornado with it, no damage, no injuries or anything like that. But we're going to have to wait and track this to see where it goes. It looks like it's going to be close to Douglasville here shortly. Again, as of now, this is radar indicated. Further to the north, we're going up, we're watching a storm approaching Poplar Bluff, Missouri. You can see this kind of hook in here. Our computer indicates a little rotation. So this could be a close call. Tornado sirens are going off in Poplar Bluff, Missouri. Get to your safe rooms now as that storm races through. So we have the tornado threat. And then as we go throughout tonight and tomorrow, it has just rained day after day. And so everywhere you see the maroon here, we have flash flood warnings. I mean, they're just popping up all over the place. Even St. Louis is under one right now. West Plains, Missouri is under a flash flood warning. And as these storms do move towards Memphis and Little Rock, we're going to see them spreading an additional 5 to 10 inches of rain. It's already rained 5 to 10 inches. This is going to end up being like 10 to 20 inches of rain. This is the additional rainfall that we expect. And tomorrow during the day, we expect rivers to really start to jump, Allison. Everywhere in purple you see here, that's major flooding. And that means water should be entering homes and businesses in so many spots this weekend.
All right, Bill Cairns, thank you. An update now on a story we've been reporting on for the past week. A Michigan couple imprisoned for a month in Mexico over a timeshare dispute, now finally back home. NBC's Maggie Vespa spoke with the family, and she has their story.
This is the moment Paul and Christy Akeo walked free from a notorious Mexican prison after being held for a month over a timeshare dispute. The Michigan grandparents, escorted by their congressman, flying straight home into the arms of their family.
What was it like hugging your kids that first time?
It was amazing. Like, I was so happy to see them. I never thought that I was going to be able to see them again. So no, I didn't. In my mind, I thought,
you're going to die in prison.
I was going to die there.
They say they had no idea they were being investigated for fraud when they flew to Cancun for vacation last month. That investigation was over nearly $117,000 worth of charges tied to their membership contract with timeshare company Palace Elite Resorts, which Paul, a U.S. Navy veteran, successfully disputed with their credit card companies in 2022. The couple argued Palace failed to provide the goods and services, but a lawyer for Palace argued the disputed charges amounted to fraud. The couple detained while the case progressed.
I wanted to die because it was so just disgusting.
I spoke with the Akeo's daughter last week.
We need help.
Soon after, help came. Michigan Congressman Tom Barrett traveled to Cancun to demand their release.
I said, I'm here for one reason, to get Paul and Christy back home, and I'm not leaving without them.
He said the case had also caught the eye of President Trump.
I want to thank, our government for stepping in, because we wouldn't be here.
Tonight, Palace says under an agreement they reached with the Akeos, a sum of money will be donated to charity, adding each party regrets that this incident occurred. Prosecutors say all charges against the Akeos have been dropped.
We're just grateful to be home.
Yeah.
You're just grateful to be home.
Yeah.
Maggie Vespa, NBC News, Lansing, Michigan.
We're back in a moment with our one-on-one interview with the wife of the Maryland man mistakenly deported to an El Salvador prison and the ruling today that may get him back home. And playtime is over. The toy company CEO behind dolls like Bratz now grappling with tariffs. His message to President Trump when he joins Top Story live. We're back with Top Stories news feed. Sean Diddy Combs hit with new charges in his third superseding indictment. Combs now charged with 2 additional counts of sex trafficking and transportation to engage in prostitution. He has pleaded not guilty and denies all of the allegations against him. Combs remains behind bars in a Manhattan jail before his trial next month. And a 24-year-old bull rider from Wyoming is dead after being injured at an event in Texas. Dylan Grant was bucked off and then stepped on by a bull, according to the Professional Rodeo Cowboys Association. It happened last night at a county youth fair, about an hour from Houston. Grant had just debuted on the pro circuit last year. He was a state champion before going on to compete at the University of Wyoming. And new details about that deadly stabbing at a track meet in Texas. According to the arrest warrant, 17-year-old Carmelo Anthony told police that Austin Metcalf, also 17 years old, grabbed him and told him to move. That's when Anthony pulled out a knife and stabbed Metcalf, telling police it was in self-defense. Anthony was charged with murder and is held on a $1 million bond. He could face between 5 to 99 years in jail if convicted. And the Washington home of L.A. Dodgers pitcher Blake Snell broken into. This surveillance image shows 2 people at Snell's home. No one was there at the time. Police say they found a broken window after arriving at the scene and that it could not be determined if anything was stolen. It happened during the same week as a break-in at the home of former Seattle Seahawks cornerback Richard Sherman. Police say their homes are about an hour apart, but that there is not enough information to draw a connection. Where President Trump has made the decision to extend his federal government overhaul to the NSA now, firing 2 top officials at the intelligence agency, although the White House still has not said why. It comes after Trump fired a string of other national security advisors following a meeting with a far-right conspiracy theorist. NBC's Gabe Gutierrez is traveling with the president tonight in West Palm Beach.
Tonight, the 2 top officials at the NSA, the National Security Agency, Air Force General Timothy Hawk and his deputy Wendy Noble are out, according to a defense official and 3 sources with knowledge of the matter. Hawk had just testified on Capitol Hill last week.
We put out an advisory on how to use this Signal app.
The White House won't say why the officials were fired, but overnight, far-right conspiracy theorist Laura Loomer apparently took credit, posting they have been disloyal to President Trump and thanking the president for being receptive to the vetting materials provided to you. Loomer met with the president earlier this week in the Oval Office.
She makes recommendations of things and people, and sometimes I listen to those recommendations.
He denies she played a role in other recent firings of national security staffers.
So we're going to let go of people that we don't like, or people that we don't think can do the job, or people that may have loyalties to somebody else.
Loomer has a history of racist posts on social media and once described herself as a proud Islamophobe. She's drawn controversy for reposting a video incorrectly saying the 9/11 terrorist attacks were an inside job and amplifying the false claim that Haitian immigrants were eating pets last year in Ohio.
In any other White House, you wouldn't let a crazy person like this 100 feet close to the White House.
And Gabe Gutierrez joins us now from West Palm Beach, Florida. Gabe, we know National Security Advisor Mike Waltz was in that meeting with Laura Loomer, defending the staffer she was attacking. Has he or anyone else from the national security community responded to these firings publicly?
Well, Allison, the National Security Council is declining to comment. And today, a Pentagon spokesperson thanked former NSA Director Hawk for his decades of service to the nation. As for that Oval Office meeting earlier this week, according to a source familiar with the meeting, Loomer did press Trump to fire members of the national security staff, and Waltz defended them. In an interview Thursday, Vice President Vance acknowledged the firings and said they could be good people, but that they weren't helping the president's agenda. Allison?
Gabe Gutierrez, thank you. A major update tonight in a story we've been following closely. A federal judge ordering the swift return of a Maryland man who the Trump administration admitted in court documents was mistakenly taken to a mega prison in El Salvador. NBC's Gary Grumbach spoke to his wife about the error and how it's turned her family's life upside down.
Tonight, a glimmer of hope for one Maryland family after a federal judge ordered the U.S. government to return a man that was sent to El Salvador because of what the Trump administration called an administrative error.
I want to say thank you to everyone that has helped us, that has supported us in fighting this. rights, and we will continue fighting for Kilmer, for my husband.
The judge giving the U.S. government until this Monday at 11:59 p.m. to bring Kilmer Abrego Garcia home.
This is the America we believe in.
Dozens of immigration advocates outside the Maryland courthouse today in support of Abrego Garcia, a protected legal resident with a work permit. His case getting national attention after it was revealed he was brought to a maximum security prison in El Salvador on March 15th, even though he had a court-ordered pause on his deportation to El Salvador.
I knew immediately it wasn't a traffic stop.
In an interview with NBC News, his wife, Jennifer Vasquez-Sura, said her husband was driving with their 5-year-old son on March 12th when he was pulled over.
They told me that I had to be there to pick up my son because he was being arrested.
He was then sent to Texas, and in what court filings have called an administrative error, ended up on a plane heading to El Salvador, alongside hundreds of Venezuelans sent to one of the country's notorious mega prisons. Court documents show Abrego Garcia entered the U.S. illegally in 2011. In immigration proceedings in 2019, a government informant identified him as a member of MS-13, something his family and attorneys deny. Is he a member of MS-13?
No.
So they're incorrect in saying that?
They're wrong.
But the Trump administration doubling down on their decision to deport Abrego Garcia.
This is not exactly Father of the Year here. This is a person that we don't think should be in our country.
His wife firing back.
He's wrong. My husband is the best father.
The Trump administration claiming in court filings they lacked the power to return Abrego Garcia to the U.S. The attorney arguing on behalf of the administration today said in court he didn't have an answer as to why. Plaintiff's counsel taking note.
Plenty of tweets, plenty of White House press conferences, but no actual steps with the government of El Salvador to take it right, no actual steps to bring him back, and no actual steps to even communicate or provide documents to the lawyer who they sent into court to defend their actions.
Abrego Garcia's wife left to explain what happened to their 3 young children.
They're confused. They don't understand why he disappeared. And they'll make calls to him and send messages that are not getting read.
And Gary joins us now from D.C. Gary, what is the Trump administration saying about the judge's order?
Yeah, well, they're already appealing the judge's order today to the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, and the Department of Homeland Security is out with a statement saying in part, quote, whether he is in El Salvador or a detention facility in the U.S., he will be locked up and off America's streets. Now, it's important to note here, what the judge's ruling did today was order him brought back to the United States. Whether or not he remains detained was not up to this judge to decide. Ellison?
Gary Grumbach, thank you. Turning back to President Trump's widespread tariff plans, which could impact nearly every product on the market, and not even the toy aisle is safe from rising prices. 80% of all toys sold in the U.S. are made in China. That's according to the Toy Association. Some experts say the prices of toys could jump 50% after yesterday's tariffs hit 2 of the biggest manufacturers, China and Vietnam. For more on how the toy industry is reacting, I want to bring in Isaac Larian. He's the founder and CEO of MGA Entertainment. That is the world's largest privately owned toy company, known for brands like Bratz dolls and Little Tykes. Isaac, thank you so much for joining Top Story this evening. Talk to me about what these tariffs mean for your company. How big of an impact will this have on you and your employees?
Listen, thank you for having me. When you put tariff on toys, you are you're not taxing the corporations, you're taxing childhood joy. And this to me is wrong. President Trump got it right the first time in his administration when he had 0 tariff on toys, and I hope he does the same thing again. I really, you know, we have the largest toy manufacturer in USA in Hudson, Ohio. And I've been doing this for 46 years. We make Cozy Coupe, the #1 selling car in America. We make Turtle Sandbox, all joys that people remember. And I'm sure Barron Trump played with the Cozy Coupe, and so has Mr. Trump's grandchildren. And I'm telling you, there's no way that you can make a Bratz doll. There's no way you can make a Bratz doll in the USA I am not aware that during the past 100 years, any doll has ever been made in USA because it's tedious work, it needs a lot of different skill sets, and frankly, we don't have the laborers to do it. If we could make it in Hudson, Ohio, we would. It's not possible. So I ask Mr. Trump and Mr. Ludwig not to be the Grinch who stole Christmas. Leave the kids and leave the toys alone for tariffs, please.
What are you expecting to happen in the coming weeks and months as it relates to the cost? I mean, are higher costs something that you and your company will be able to work around, or should consumers expect to see higher toy prices?
There is, Allison, we have merchandise sitting at the LA Harbor and Long Beach Harbor. Those toys are going to cost 54% more to import in the United States. There is no way that MGA or any other toy company can absorb that. We work on very thin margins. So what's going to happen is that we have to raise prices anywhere between 35 to 50% to stay in business. And the other thing that people should realize, Toy Association and MGA got 20 countries, including Japan, China, Vietnam, to reciprocate and have zero tariff on toys. And we were shipping Cozy Coupe and Made in America toys to China, to Japan, to Vietnam, to Korea. Now we can't because the price is going to be higher by 34%, so it's a double whammy. And frankly, if this continues, we have to lay off people and cut back on our factory in Ohio rather than expanding it, which Mr. Trump wants.
So you believe you will have to lay off American workers as a result of these tariffs? How many about?
Absolutely. I think things have been moving so fast that, the tariffs started at 10%, then they went to 20%, then they went to 20% from 34%. So we have not, it's impossible for any business, including MGA, to plan against that. So now we're waiting for things to settle down next week in order to figure out what do we have to do with the company.
President,
and I hope by then, go ahead. I hope by then the administration will do what they did during the first administration. Leave the kids alone. Let them have joy. Let Christmas toys be under the Christmas tree this holiday. And let the adults fight the trade wars.
So from your perspective, Isaac, as we're wrapping up here, there is no other option other than raising prices, as you said, possibly 50% on toys that your company makes unless these tariffs go away. The president has said there's going to be pain in the beginning, but there will be gain long term. Just deal with the bumps in the beginning. You say that won't be the case at all.
Not in toys. And I love President Trump. I really think that he loves America, but I think putting tariffs on toys is misplaced. It is not good for the business, it's not good for imagination, it's not good for kids.
Isaac Larian, founder and CEO of MGA Entertainment, thank you so much for your time tonight and joining us here on Top Story.
Thank you, Elisa. Thank you for having me.
Heading overseas with Top Story's Global Watch. Fire officials say 2 wildfires in the UK were started by people, but it's unclear if it was intentional arson. Video shows flames engulfing an area in Poole that's about 2 hours south of London. This is home to some endangered birds and reptiles. Both fires were put out within 24 hours after burning more than 100 acres of land. And in South Korea, a court there upholding the impeachment of President Yoon Suk-yeol. Yoon, officially removed from power after his failed attempt to impose martial law, thrust the country into political turmoil last December. The court's decision means that elections to replace Yoon must be held within 60 days. The country will continue to operate without a head of state as it navigates steep U.S. tariffs and enhanced military cooperation between Russia and North Korea. And NASA doubling their odds that an asteroid initially expected to hit Earth will hit the moon. That asteroid, which is about the size of a 10-story building, now 3.8% likely to hit the moon in 2032. Not to worry, though. Astronomers note that even if the asteroid were to make impact, it would not be enough to change the moon's orbit. When Top Story returns, new details on the fate of TikTok. We have behind-the-scenes reporting on just how close the White House was to a sale, and until China blew up that deal. Stay with us. We're following new details tonight on TikTok. The deadline to sell the app to a U.S. company was just hours away, but President Trump offering another lifeline to the China-based owner, ByteDance, extending the deadline by 75 days. That's another 75 days. Trump saying on Truth Social, quote, "My administration is working very hard on a deal to save TikTok, and we have made tremendous progress. But," he added, "the deal requires more work to ensure all necessary approvals are signed." And now NBC News has some new reporting that there actually was a deal that the president was ready to sign that would have spun off TikTok's U.S. operations into a new American-based company. It would be owned and operated by American investors, with ByteDance maintaining a minority stake. But Trump's sweeping tariffs threw a wrench in the plan. Joining us now to discuss what happens next is Bloomberg anchor Caroline Hyde. Caroline, thank you so much for joining us. I mean, you have been following the TikTok drama closely. Break down what all of this means for TikTok and its users.
Ellison, such a joy to be with you. How tantalizingly close this deal seemed to have been for the private sector. We understand, as you mentioned, that ByteDance, we didn't know that before, but ByteDance had actually been coming to the table with the U.S. government and private sector to sell a majority of the U.S. unit to those U.S. investors, whether they include Oracle, an infrastructure provider, Blackstone, Andreessen and Horowitz with about 50%, the other 30% likely to be held by the current U.S. investors in ByteDance, the parent company. That's likes of General Atlantic or Susquehanna, and then less than 20% going to ByteDance. But no Chinese government approval. They were going to agree this on Wednesday, maybe tell it to the masses on Thursday, but then came those tariffs. Then came ByteDance's realization that China was not going to be giving its approval. And for now, it is on ice. They have to go back to the drawing board. It will become part of the geopolitical football that it already is.
So now that we know tariffs did play a big role in this, is that something China could use as a negotiating tool in the future to continue holding up this deal?
This is such a key question. Who has, well, the ultimate upper hand here? President Trump has long said he would use TikTok as part of the negotiations with China, but now China is so antagonized by what the U.S. has done in terms of tariffs and fired back with its own tariffs of in excess of 30% and indeed a renege on selling certain key rare earth minerals. They now potentially hold the upper hand by withdrawing the ability for TikTok to be sold to those U.S. investors. Now, remember, there's also nuance to all of this. Legally speaking, Trump wasn't allowed to give another extension of 75 days. And legally speaking, they're not allowed to keep the algorithm held by the Chinese. This is what this deal that we understand J.D. Vance for months has been trying to negotiate would entail, that indeed China would overall oversee the algorithm, but with some monitoring by Oracle. Is that enough? There are still other players in the mix, remember. Other key private sectors want their hands on it. We've heard from Frank McCourt Jr., who's joined our show plenty, and I'm sure yours, who's come on and said he's still in the running with Alexis Ohanian and he still wants to buy it without the algorithm. There's other players throwing their hats in the ring. Amazon, Walmart, we understand, to certain reports. And, of course, plenty of others. Jesse Tinsley is another person who's eyeing the asset overall. So plenty still to come. But it really is becoming part of the geopolitical context here. China, we have long understood, is not wanting to let go of this asset. Teneo, for example, a key consultancy today, is saying they're not going to want to let this go because for them that would mean capitulation.
Really interesting stuff. Excellent reporting. Bloomberg anchor Caroline Hyde, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And thank you so much for watching Top Story. I'm Ellison Barber in New York for Tom Llamas. Stay right there. More news is on the way.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.